Hi everyone, it's Driftwood for Gamerside, and today I'm going to tell you about a nice little game I played. It's called A Juggler's Tale, and it was developed by German studio Kaleidoscope. Maybe you've already had a chance to try it, as there was a short demo during the Steam Festival about a year ago. Maybe it was even made available again last summer, but I remember I played it for the first time back in 2020. You should know that the game was originally a student project, but that the dev team was so happy with the vertical slice they had made, they decided to make a full game with 5 chapters. I should tell you right from the start that A Juggler's Tale is short, but although it's not perfect by any means, I still wanted to put it in the spotlight because I really enjoyed my time playing it. Hopefully the next few minutes will be enough to help you understand why.
Moon hangs heavy in the late night sky.
A Juggler's Tale is a medieval fairy tale set in a puppet show. The story is told by a narrator who is actually the puppet master Jack. You play the role of Abby, not the one from The Last of Us Part 2, obviously, though clearly the world you're about to discover is a lot grimmer than it looks at first. Abby may seem happy to work as an artist in a circus, but she's actually held captive, and she has to go back to her cage every time the show's over. Dreaming of freedom and open spaces, she manages to set herself free with the help of a friend the bear. She's forced to abandon him though, having no other choice but to run away from the circus. As you can guess, the ringmaster isn't just going to let her go so easily, so he ends up hiring a bunch of mercenaries to chase her and bring her back. Poor Abby will have to overcome all sorts of obstacles to deserve the freedom she's been longing for. The story of A Juggler's Tale is that of a runaway then, something we've seen before in such games, but the presence of a narrator speaking a lyrical rhyme makes it a lot more original. Jack adds a lot to the overall atmosphere, and he really becomes a character in his own way as we progress. The musicality it brings to the narrative makes it more unique than you could expect at first. The folk-inspired music with a bit of a modern touch is also very important to set the mood, and combined with the ambient sound effects, it makes the game very atmospheric. But before being a fairy tale, A Juggler's Tale is above all a video game, which is why I'm going to talk about gameplay now.
It's just a windmill standing still, perhaps envying you for your...
In case you hadn't noticed, Kaleidoscope's game is what we call a cinematic platformer, like Limbo and Inside before it, for example. It is quite clear that Inside was one of the inspirations for A Juggler's Tale. Now, of course, if you're as old as I am, titles like Prince of Persia by Jordan Mechner, Another World by Eric Chahi, or Flashback by Paul Cuisset are the cult classics that created the genre in the first place. But Limbo marked its return to glory back in 2010, and many developers have tried to do as well ever since. I guess you all know what a cinematic platformer is, but I remind it to you anyway. It's a mix between platforming sequences and environmental puzzles with a strong emphasis on storytelling to give it a more cinematic feel. What makes A Juggler's Tale more unique is that the main character is a puppet attached by the strings of its puppet master. The game's puzzles are quite logically centered around that idea, forcing you to find a way to overcome the obstacles despite this constraint. It's a nice touch and it works well overall, but the puzzles are never really challenging in my opinion. I was a bit worried that the story twist, which occurs midway through the game, would make the game more generic than it should have been, but the devs found a way to use the mechanic a bit differently. There could probably have been a bit more depth to the way it is used, but it wouldn't be fair not to recognize the efforts put in making the different situations as varied as possible. Much like in Inside and many other games in the genre, A Juggler's Tale features some stealth sequences where you have to stay away from the light or use the environment to sneak past your enemies unnoticed. About that, I didn't always find it very easy to spot the interactive elements. There are different colors, sure, it's red by default, but it can be changed to yellow and blue, I think, in the option menu. But every time I got stuck for a little while, it was usually because I hadn't understood that I could interact with something. There's one passage especially that had me focus on apples while there was something else I needed to see to be able to progress.
Oh, that looked painful.
Abby will also have to run away from the mercenaries that are after her.
Run, Abby.
These chase sequences may require you to start over at the last checkpoint, as small mistakes and hesitations usually mean you're done for. It's no big deal, but since some people brought up the problem in Little Nightmares 2, I thought it was worth mentioning it. Trial and error being a big part of the experience in cinematic platformers, I don't think it should come as a surprise though.
Grown so accustomed to me helping.
The biggest problem I think people will have with the game will be how short it is. It took me a bit more than 2 hours and a half to complete, and I think there was definitely room for a bit more locations to explore and discover. I know it's also a component of the genre, but it's really a shame not to have more landscapes to marvel at, as the artists behind the game truly make you want to see more.
Are no less shy. Freedom is hard, Abby. Get used to it. The woods are a lonely place, but in a village, can Abby find solace? Abby wanted the world, and it shows itself at its best.
I don't think I need to say much more, really. The images speak for themselves, don't they? A Juggler's Tale is really a gorgeous game. The landscapes are simply breathtaking, with a perfect choice of colors that either make them look poetic or very sinister. Character models may look a bit simple in comparison, but to me it's more of an artistic decision than anything else. It's like the stiff animations, if you ask me. I mean, the characters are puppets attached by strings, so it makes sense somehow. That said, I could understand the criticism in that regard. The rest is perfect, though. I even had to force myself to make this video as short as possible. Like I said, the game is short, so it would have been easy to show too much, to give you a sneak peek at all the different locations. It's something I wanted to avoid, as I believe a huge part of the enjoyment comes with the discovery of the world. Another thing that I particularly liked is the narrator. British actor Sean Lawton has done a great job at portraying Jack the Puppet Master. I'm also quite fond of the soundtrack. It's not there all the time, the devs use it when it counts, but they also give space to the ambient sound so we can feel immersed in the game's atmosphere. There's even a full Bandit song at some point, and I'll let you listen to some of it now.
Juggler slipped the sack, and now we finally got her, and we're bringing Abby back. Once we get there, our rewards will make us fat. We're rich, so much gold for little bread.
A Juggler's Tale is a very nice little game. The idea of the puppet strings is quite original, and even though the game design itself isn't, what the game does, it does pretty well. I don't consider it as memorable as Inside from Playdead, but I was definitely impressed by the way some sequences were presented. The problem I have is that I don't really know whether or not I should recommend the purchase. And the main reason is simple: I haven't been able to find any info on the price. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who believes that a game's worth depends on the money you have to put down, but since The Juggler's Tale provides a very short experience, I wouldn't want you to be disappointed. If the game is sold around €10 or pounds or dollars, I guess it should be okay, but then again, only you know what you're willing to pay for a video game. All I know is that this first game shows promises. The guys at Kaleidoscube are talented for sure, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they will do next. Hopefully what I've said and shown of the game will allow you to decide whether or not it can be worth your time and money. But as we say, no strings attached. Well, that's it for me. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me until the end of the video. Have a great day and stay tuned for more content on Gamerside in the weeks to come. It was Driftwood for Gamerside. Take care and bye-bye.
The world's perfect. Abby, Do you want to end up strung up on a tree?